They refused her Wi-Fi, mocked her worn laptop, and told her to leave. What they didn't know was that her quiet husband owned every single location across the country. When he walked through that door, their world turned upside down forever. Sarah Martinez had always been the type of person who preferred libraries to coffee shops, quiet corners to bustling crowds. At 28, she worked as a freelance graphic designer, spending most of her days hunched over her aging laptop, creating logos and websites for small businesses that couldn't afford the big agencies. Her workspace was wherever she could find reliable internet and a decent cup of coffee. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. That Tuesday morning started like any other. Sarah had woken up in the small apartment she shared with her husband, David, grabbed her worn leather messenger bag, and kissed him goodbye as he headed off to his job at what he vaguely described as a corporate consulting firm. David had always been modest about his work, saying he helped businesses run more efficiently. He left early, came home late, and never talked much about the details. Sarah respected his privacy and focused on building her own career. The Brew Haven on 5th Street had become her regular spot over the past few months. It was a newer location in the trendy downtown district, all exposed brick and industrial lighting, with the kind of atmosphere that made freelancers feel productive. Sarah had discovered it during a particularly stressful week when her home internet was down, and she had 3 client deadlines looming. The coffee was decent, the Wi-Fi was fast, and most importantly, the staff had always been friendly. She developed a routine of ordering a medium latte and settling into the corner table by the window, where she could work for hours without feeling guilty about taking up space. The regulars knew her by sight, and she'd even struck up casual conversations with other freelancers who frequented the place. But today felt different from the moment she walked through the glass doors. The usual morning barista, Jenny, wasn't behind the counter. Instead, a tall woman with perfectly styled blonde hair and a badge reading District Manager Rebecca Stone stood with her arms crossed, surveying the café like a general inspecting troops. Sarah approached the counter cautiously, sensing tension in the air. The barista she didn't recognize, a young man with nervous energy, barely made eye contact as she ordered her usual latte. His hands shook slightly as he worked the espresso machine, and Sarah noticed him glancing repeatedly toward Rebecca, who was now standing near the entrance, clipboard in hand. After paying, Sarah made her way to her regular corner table, relieved to see it was empty. She pulled out her laptop, a 3-year-old model that had seen better days, but still got the job done. The screen had a small crack in the corner from when she'd accidentally dropped it last month, and the battery life was questionable at best, but it was hers, and it held all her work, her livelihood. As she waited for her laptop to boot up, Sarah noticed Rebecca approaching. The district manager's heels clicked authoritatively against the polished concrete floor, and her expression was anything but welcoming. "Excuse me," Rebecca said, her voice cutting through the ambient cafe noise. "I'm going to need you to move." Sarah looked up, confused. "I'm sorry, is there a problem? I've been sitting here for months, and I always buy something." Rebecca's eyes swept over Sarah's appearance with obvious disdain. Sarah was wearing her usual work outfit, dark jeans, a simple sweater, and comfortable sneakers. Her hair was pulled back in a practical ponytail, and she carried herself with the understated confidence of someone who valued substance over style. "This table is reserved for premium customers," Rebecca announced loudly enough for nearby patrons to hear. "Customers who make substantial purchases and enhance the ambiance of our establishment." Sarah felt her cheeks burn with embarrassment. "I buy coffee here every day. I've never had any issues before." "That was before I implemented new policies," Rebecca replied curtly. "This is a business establishment, not a homeless shelter. If you want to loiter, find somewhere else to do it." The comment stung more than Sarah wanted to admit. She wasn't homeless, far from it, but she understood how she might appear to someone like Rebecca. Her clothes were practical rather than fashionable, her laptop was old, and she didn't carry designer accessories or wear expensive jewelry. In Rebecca's world, these things apparently mattered more than being a paying customer. "I'd like to use the Wi-Fi," Sarah said quietly, trying to maintain her dignity. Rebecca laughed, a sharp sound that made several other customers turn and stare. "The Wi-Fi is for customers who contribute meaningfully to our bottom line, not for people who nurse a single coffee for 4 hours while taking up valuable real estate." Sarah's face flushed deeper. It was true that she typically bought only one drink per visit, but she'd always assumed that was acceptable as long as she wasn't causing problems. She'd seen other freelancers do the same thing without issue. "I can buy another coffee," Sarah offered, reaching for her wallet. "It's not just about the coffee," Rebecca said, her voice dripping with condescension. "It's about maintaining standards. This location caters to professionals, executives, people who understand quality. We can't have just anyone camping out here with their ancient equipment giving the wrong impression to our target demographic." The conversation was attracting more attention now. Sarah could feel other customers watching, some with sympathy, others with the uncomfortable fascination people have when witnessing someone else's humiliation. She wanted nothing more to disappear, but she also had 3 client projects due by the end of the week. "Please," Sarah said, hating how small her voice sounded, "I really need to work. I'll buy whatever you want me to buy." Rebecca shook her head firmly. "I'm afraid that's not how this works. This establishment has standards to maintain. Perhaps you'd be more comfortable at one of the chain locations in the strip mall. They're more accommodating to people in your situation." The dismissal was clear, but Sarah couldn't bring herself to leave. This cafe had become part of her routine, part of her professional life. She'd built relationships here, found her rhythm, created some of her best work at this very table. "What exactly is my situation?" Sarah asked, her voice gaining strength despite her embarrassment. Rebecca sighed dramatically. "Look, I'm trying to be tactful here, but since you're forcing me to be direct, let me spell it out. You come in here every day with that ancient laptop, order the cheapest thing on the menu, and monopolize prime seating for hours. You don't fit the image we're trying to cultivate. Our ideal customers are successful, polished professionals who appreciate quality and aren't afraid to pay for it." The barista behind the counter, who had been pretending not to listen, now looked openly uncomfortable. Sarah noticed him glancing toward the back office, as if hoping someone else would intervene. "I am a professional," Sarah said, her voice steadier now. "I run my own business. I work with clients across the country." Rebecca's laugh was even sharper this time. "Graphic design isn't exactly what I'd call a serious profession. Anyone with a computer thinks they're a designer these days. I'm talking about real professionals, lawyers, executives, consultants who work for major corporations." Sarah felt something shift inside her. The embarrassment was still there, but it was being replaced by anger. Not just at Rebecca's treatment, but at the assumptions she was making, the way she was dismissing Sarah's work, her worth as a person. "I've been coming here for months," Sarah said. "I've never caused any problems. I've always been respectful to the staff and other customers. I don't understand why that's suddenly not good enough." Rebecca crossed her arms tighter, clearly irritated that Sarah wasn't simply accepting the dismissal and leaving quietly. Other customers were now openly staring, and Sarah could hear whispered conversations starting around the room. She recognized some of the faces, other regulars who had shared friendly nods with her over the past months. None of them were speaking up in her defense, but she could see discomfort in their expressions. "What if I upgrade my order?" Sarah tried one more time. "I could buy lunch or multiple drinks." "It's not about the money," Rebecca replied, though her tone suggested it absolutely was. "It's about brand positioning. We're cultivating an environment that appeals to successful, affluent customers. That means being selective about who we allow to use our space for extended periods." Sarah looked around the cafe, really looked at it for the first time with this new perspective. She saw the expensive light fixtures, the carefully curated art on the walls, the gleaming espresso machine that probably cost more than her car. She noticed the other customers' clothes, their accessories, their newer laptops and tablets. For months, she'd felt welcome here, accepted. Now she realized she'd been tolerated at best, and only until someone decided she was no longer worth tolerating.
Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story.
I understand, Sarah said quietly, beginning to pack up her laptop. Her hands were shaking slightly, whether from anger or humiliation, she wasn't sure. But Rebecca wasn't finished. As Sarah closed her laptop case, the district manager leaned closer, lowering her voice to what she probably thought was a confidential tone, but was still audible to nearby tables. "Let me give you some free advice," Rebecca said. "If you want to be taken seriously in business, you need to invest in yourself. Get some proper equipment, upgrade your wardrobe, learn to present yourself professionally. This whole starving artist routine might work in college, but in the real world, perception matters." Sarah paused in her packing. "Excuse me?" "I'm trying to help you here," Rebecca continued, apparently interpreting Sarah's question as interest rather than offense. "You clearly have some talent, or you wouldn't be able to make even a modest living at this. But you're never going to attract quality clients looking like this, working on equipment that belongs in a museum." The condescension in Rebecca's voice was overwhelming. Sarah realized that this woman didn't just want her to leave the cafe. She wanted to remake Sarah entirely, to mold her into someone who would fit Rebecca's narrow definition of success and professionalism. "My clients are perfectly happy with my work," Sarah said, her voice tight with controlled anger. "Your small business clients, sure," Rebecca replied dismissively. "But I'm talking about real clients, corporate accounts, the kind of work that actually pays well. You'll never land those kinds of contracts if you don't understand how to project success." Sarah finished packing her bag in silence, her mind reeling. She'd always prided herself on being authentic, on focusing on the quality of her work rather than superficial appearances. But standing in this cafe, being lectured by this woman who had never seen her portfolio or everything. As she slung her messenger bag over her shoulder, Rebecca delivered what was clearly meant to be a final piece of wisdom. "Look, I get it. When you're struggling, it's tempting to cut corners, to convince yourself that appearances don't matter. But in business, especially in client services, how you present yourself is part of the product you're selling. Successful people want to work with other successful people. It's just human nature." Sarah stood there for a moment, looking around the cafe one last time. The barista behind the counter gave her a sympathetic look, but said nothing. The other customers had mostly returned to their own conversations, though she caught a few still glancing in her direction. "Thank you for the advice," Sarah said finally, her voice carefully neutral. "I'll definitely take it under consideration." Rebecca smiled, apparently satisfied that she'd successfully educated this misguided young woman about the realities of professional life. "I hope you find somewhere more suitable to work. Really, I do." Sarah walked toward the door, her cheeks still burning with embarrassment and anger. As she reached for the handle, she heard Rebecca speaking to the nervous barista in a voice that wasn't quite as quiet as she probably intended. "That's exactly the kind of situation we need to avoid going forward," Rebecca was saying. "One person like that can completely change the atmosphere of the place. Customers notice these things, and they make decisions about where to spend their money based on the other people they see there." Sarah paused with her hand on the door handle. Part of her wanted to turn around, to say something, to defend herself and her right to exist in this space like any other paying customer. But another part of her just wanted to escape, to get away from the stares and whispers and the crushing weight of being found so thoroughly inadequate. She pushed through the door and stepped onto the sidewalk, the cool morning air hitting her heated face. For a moment, she just stood there, trying to process what had just happened. She'd been a regular customer, someone who had never caused problems, never been rude to staff, never made unreasonable demands. And yet, she'd been made to feel like an intruder, like someone who didn't deserve to share space with more successful people. Sarah pulled out her phone, her fingers hovering over David's contact information. Part of her wanted to call him, to tell him what had happened, to seek comfort from the one person who always made her feel valued and appreciated. But David was at work, probably in meetings, dealing with his own professional challenges. The last thing he needed was her calling in tears because a coffee shop manager had hurt her feelings. Instead, she walked to her car, a reliable but unremarkable sedan that was now apparently another mark against her in the eyes of people like Rebecca. She sat in the driver's seat for several minutes, trying to decide what to do next. She had work to finish, deadlines to meet, but her usual workspace had been stripped away. Sarah thought about Rebecca's comments about her appearance, her equipment, her clients. Was the district manager right? Had Sarah been naive to think that the quality of her work would speak for itself? Should she have been more concerned with projecting an image of success, even if it meant going into debt to buy newer equipment and more expensive clothes? She looked at her reflection in the rearview mirror, seeing herself through Rebecca's eyes. Her sweater was comfortable, but certainly not designer. Her hair was pulled back practically rather than styled. She wore minimal makeup because she spent most of her time alone at her computer. Had she been unconsciously sabotaging her own career by not caring enough about these superficial details? But then Sarah thought about her clients, the small business owners who trusted her with their visual identity, who appreciated her creativity and reliability. She thought about the logos she'd designed that had helped new companies establish their presence, the websites that had increased sales for family-owned businesses. Her work mattered regardless of where she created it or what she wore while doing it. Still, the encounter had shaken her more than she wanted to admit. As she started her car and began driving toward the public library where she knew she could work in peace, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that something fundamental had shifted. She'd always believed that hard work and talent would be enough, that treating people with respect and kindness would be reciprocated. Today had challenged those assumptions in a way that felt deeply personal and profoundly unfair. The library would have to do for now, but as Sarah drove through the city streets, she found herself wondering if there were other spaces, other situations where she was being judged and found wanting without even realizing it. Rebecca's words echoed in her mind, forcing her to question not just how others saw her, but how she saw herself. Sarah sat in the library parking lot, staring at her phone. The encounter at Brew Haven replayed in her mind like a broken record. She needed to work, but concentration felt impossible. Her fingers hovered over David's contact before she finally pressed call. "Hey, beautiful," David answered on the second ring. "How's your day going?" Sarah's voice cracked. "It's been rough. I got kicked out of the coffee shop." "What happened?" His tone shifted immediately, becoming serious and alert. Through tears, Sarah recounted everything. Rebecca's dismissive attitude, the comments about her appearance, the public humiliation, the way other customers had stared. She told him about feeling inadequate, questioning whether she belonged anywhere professional. The silence on the other end stretched longer than usual. "David, are you there?" "I'm here." His voice had changed completely. Gone was the gentle, supportive tone she knew. This voice was cold, controlled, dangerous. "Sarah, I need you to go home. Right now. But I have deadlines. I need to find somewhere to work. Go home. I'm handling this." There was something in his voice she'd never heard before. "And Sarah, you've never been the problem. Not once, not ever." Before she could respond, he hung up. Confused and emotionally drained, Sarah drove home to their modest apartment. She tried to work from their small dining table, but her laptop kept overheating and she couldn't focus. Every few minutes, she found herself replaying Rebecca's words, wondering if there was truth in the harsh assessment. 2 hours later, her phone buzzed with a text from David. "Turn on Channel 7 News, now." Sarah grabbed the remote, flipping to the local news station. The anchor was mid-sentence about a major business announcement. The camera cut to a press conference, and Sarah's breath caught in her throat. Standing at a podium in an expensive suit she'd never seen before was David. But this wasn't the David she knew. This man commanded attention, spoke with authority, and carried himself like someone accustomed to power. This also is why we believe investing in the Fatherland Clinic.
Pleased to announce the immediate restructuring of Brew Haven Coffee's management team, he was saying. Effective today, I'm implementing new customer service standards across all 847 locations nationwide. The reporter's voice cut in. For those just joining us, this is David Chen, CEO and founder of Brew Haven Coffee, announcing sweeping changes to company policy following what he calls unacceptable treatment of customers at their downtown location. Sarah's laptop slipped from her hands, clattering to the floor. David was the CEO of Brew Haven, her husband of 3 years who left every morning claiming to work in corporate consulting, owned the entire coffee shop chain where she'd just been humiliated. The news continued. David was announcing the immediate termination of Rebecca Stone, along with a comprehensive review of all district managers. He spoke about creating inclusive environments where all customers felt welcome, regardless of their appearance or equipment. Sarah's phone rang. "David, I can explain," he said immediately. "You own Brew Haven." Her voice was barely a whisper. "I built it from scratch, started with one location 8 years ago." His voice was gentler now, more like the David she knew. "Sarah, I never told you because I wanted you to love me for who I am, not what I own. I've been going to your coffee shops for months, spending my money at your business. I know. I've known since the first day you walked into the 5th Street location. The manager mentioned this freelancer who came in every day, always polite, always professional. When he described you, I realized it was my wife supporting my business without even knowing it." Sarah's mind reeled. "You knew I was there every day and you didn't say anything? I loved that you chose my place because you genuinely enjoyed it. Not because I owned it, not because you felt obligated, but because you found it comfortable and productive. It made me proud in a way I can't explain. So you watched me get humiliated by your employee? I had no idea that was happening. Rebecca Stone was hired 3 weeks ago by the previous district manager. If I had known she was treating customers that way, especially you, she would have been gone immediately." Sarah heard a car door slam outside. Through the window, she saw David walking toward their building, still in his expensive suit, phone pressed to his ear. "Are you downstairs? I left the press conference early. We need to talk properly." Minutes later, David walked through their apartment door. Seeing him in this context, expensive suit in their modest living room, made the disconnect even more jarring. He looked like he belonged in boardrooms and country clubs, not their small apartment. "Why?" Sarah asked simply. David loosened his tie, suddenly looking tired. "When I started the company, I was working 18-hour days, consumed by growth and profit margins. I forgot what actually mattered. When I met you, you reminded me." He sat across from her at their small table. "You talked about your students like they were your own children. You got excited about a logo design like it was fine art. You found joy in simple things. I hadn't felt that kind of genuine happiness in years. But the secrecy, David, 3 years of marriage? I was terrified you'd change, that knowing about the money would shift how you saw me, how you saw yourself. I watched it happen to my parents' marriage. The wealth consumed everything genuine between them." Sarah understood, but it still hurt. "I spent today questioning everything about myself because I thought I was some struggling freelancer who didn't belong in nice places. You belong everywhere." David's voice was fierce. "Your work is extraordinary. Your clients adore you. You make the world more beautiful, one design at a time. Rebecca Stone couldn't create what you create if she had 1,000 years. What happens now?" David pulled out his phone, scrolling through messages. "Rebecca Stone will never work in customer service again. I'm implementing mandatory sensitivity training for all management staff. And I'm personally reviewing every complaint we've received in the past year to see if this was an isolated incident or part of a larger pattern. I mean, with us." David set his phone down. "That's up to you. I know I should have told you. I know this changes things." Sarah looked around their apartment, thinking about their quiet dinners, their weekend walks, the way David always listened to her stories about difficult clients or creative breakthroughs. None of that had been fake. "You still want to live here? In this apartment? I want to live wherever you're happy. If you want to move somewhere bigger, we can. If you want to stay here, we stay. If you want me to sell the company and start over, I'll do it." "You'd sell Brew Haven?" "Sarah, I built that company to prove I could. I keep it running because it employs good people and serves communities. But it's not who I am. You are who I am. The man you fell in love with exists because of how you see him." Sarah's phone buzzed with notifications. Her freelance clients were calling and texting, having seen David's press conference. Word was spreading that the wife of Brew Haven's CEO was a local graphic designer. "My clients know now. Are you worried they'll treat you differently?" Sarah considered this. Some probably would, assuming her success was due to her husband's connections rather than her talent. Others might expect discounts or special treatment. Everything was about to become more complicated. "Rebecca was wrong about you," David continued, "but she was right about one thing. Perception matters in business. Not because superficial things actually matter, but because people like her exist and make decisions based on assumptions." "So what are you saying?" "I'm saying you shouldn't have to hide who you are or shrink yourself to make others comfortable. If you want nicer equipment because it makes your work easier, let's get it. If you want to expand your client base, I can introduce you to people who need your skills. But do it because you want to grow, not because someone like Rebecca made you feel small." Sarah's laptop chimed with an email notification, then another and another. Her inbox was filling with messages from potential clients who had seen the news coverage. "This is going to change everything, only if we let it. I've been living a double life for 3 years, and I'm tired of it. I want us to build something real together. Maybe you keep freelancing, maybe you start your own agency, maybe you do something completely different. But whatever you choose, I want it to be because it makes you happy, not because you're trying to prove something to people who don't matter." Sarah thought about Rebecca's words, about projecting success and attracting quality clients. She realized now that Rebecca had been wrong about almost everything, but right about one thing. How you present yourself does affect how others treat you. The difference was that Sarah didn't need to change herself. She needed to own who she already was. "I want to go back there," Sarah said suddenly.
To Brew Haven? To the 5th Street location. I want to finish my work at my regular table." David smiled, the first genuine smile she'd seen from him all day. "Then let's go." An hour later, they walked into Brew Haven together. The atmosphere was completely different. The nervous barista from that morning, whose name tag read Marcus, looked up with obvious relief when he saw David. "Mr. Chen, I'm so sorry about what happened this morning. I wanted to say something, but I was afraid I'd lose my job." "You should never be afraid to stand up for what's right," David replied. "From now on, if you see a customer being treated poorly, you speak up. That's not a request, it's a requirement." Sarah ordered her usual latte and settled into her corner table. David sat across from her, looking oddly content in the space he'd created but never properly experienced as a customer. "Is this what you do every day?" he asked, watching her set up her laptop. "Pretty much. Design, revise, communicate with clients, repeat." "It looks peaceful." "It is, or it was, until this morning." Other customers were starting to recognize David from the news coverage. A few approached asking for photos or to thank him for his response to the situation. Each time, he politely redirected attention to Sarah, introducing her as a talented designer rather than simply his wife. Sarah's phone continued buzzing with new client inquiries. Her inbox had over 50 messages, and her social media accounts were gaining followers by the hour. The incident that had felt like professional humiliation that morning was transforming into unexpected opportunity. "I'm going to need a better laptop," she said, looking at her ancient machine. "Whatever you want. And maybe some business cards that don't look like I printed them myself. Absolutely. But I still want to come here, to this table."
David reached across and took her hand. "Then this table is yours, permanently. I'll have them put up a little plaque if you want." Sarah laughed, the first genuine laugh she'd had all day. That might be taking it too far. As the afternoon wore on, Sarah found her rhythm again. The familiar sounds of the coffee shop, the comfortable chair, the steady Wi-Fi connection all helped her focus on her work. David stayed for an hour before needing to return to his office, but he promised to be home for dinner at their usual time. The other customers treated Sarah with a mixture of curiosity and newfound respect. Word had spread quickly through the freelancer community about what had happened and how it had been resolved. Several people approached to share their own stories of being made to feel unwelcome in professional spaces. By closing time, Sarah had finished 2 client projects and responded to 37 new business inquiries. Her calendar was booking up for the next 3 months, and she was going to need to start turning down work or consider hiring help. As she packed up her laptop, Marcus approached her table. "Mrs. Chen, I just wanted to say thank you. What happened this morning was wrong, and I should have spoken up. I won't let that happen again." "It's Sarah, and thank you. That means a lot. Also, your usual table will always be available. Mr. Chen left instructions that you're never to be disturbed while you're working." Sarah smiled. Some things were going to be different now, whether she wanted them to be or not. But maybe different didn't have to mean worse. That evening, over takeout Chinese food at their small dining table, Sarah and David talked about the future, about transparency and trust, about balancing privacy with honesty, about building a life that honored both of their ambitions. "No more secrets," Sarah said. "No more secrets," David agreed. "And I want to keep working, maybe grow the business, but on my terms. Whatever makes you happy. And I want you to be proud of what you built. Brew Haven is a good company. What happened today was one bad employee, not a reflection of everything you've created." David nodded. "I've been so focused on keeping my work separate from our life that I forgot you might actually be interested in what I do. I'm interested in everything about you, even the boring corporate stuff. It's not that boring. Prove it." For the first time since they'd met, David told Sarah about his work without holding anything back. About the challenges of rapid expansion, the complexity of managing hundreds of locations, the satisfaction of creating jobs and gathering places for communities. Sarah found herself genuinely fascinated, asking questions about operations and logistics that she'd never considered before. By the end of the evening, she had a dozen ideas for improving customer experience and several suggestions for design updates across the chain. "You know," David said as they cleaned up dinner dishes, "I could use a creative director, someone who understands both design and customer experience. Are you offering me a job? I'm offering you whatever you want. Partnership, consultation, complete independence with my support, or just a husband who brings you coffee while you work from our dining table." Sarah considered the options. A year ago, the idea of working with David would have seemed impossible because she didn't know about his business. Now, it felt like a natural extension of their partnership. "Let me think about it," she said. "Right now, I want to focus on building my own client base. But maybe someday we could find a way to work together. Whatever you decide, I'm proud of you. Today could have broken you down, but instead, you're stronger. I'm stronger because you stood up for me, for us. I'm stronger because you show me every day what actually matters." 3 months later, Sarah was working from her corner table at Brew Haven when a young woman approached hesitantly. She was carrying an old laptop and wearing clothes that looked practical rather than fashionable. "Excuse me, are you Sarah Chen, the designer?" "I am. I'm starting a small business, and I was wondering if you might have time to look at some logo concepts. I know you're probably really expensive now, but I thought maybe—" Sarah smiled, remembering her own uncertainty just a few months earlier. "Sit down. Let's talk about your business, and don't worry about the cost. Good design should be accessible to everyone." As the young entrepreneur excitedly pulled out her sketches, Sarah caught Marcus's eye behind the counter. He gave her a thumbs up and started preparing 2 lattes without being asked. Some transformations happen in an instant. Others unfold slowly, one conversation and one act of kindness at a time. Sarah had learned that success wasn't about projecting an image or meeting someone else's standards. It was about knowing your worth and finding people who recognized it.
Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.